Okay, so you want to get to grips with a really foundational text, right? Pull out the key stuff without getting bogged down. Today, we're diving into the first book of Kings, specifically chapters 1 through 22 from the King James Version. Our goal here is to, extract those core stories, figure out what they're telling us about leadership, good and bad, and maybe uncover some surprising bits about David, Solomon, and, well, how Israel ended up splitting. We've got succession drama, temple building, wisdom, politics, prophets jumping in. It's quite a mix, a lot to get through, so let's jump in.
It really is striking how it starts, isn't it? Right into the thick of it, with David being old. You might expect a smooth handover, but nope. These first chapters, they just show this kingdom facing, well, a lot of uncertainty. And that whole story with Abishag the Shunammite looking after him, the text even makes a point of saying David knew her not. It's quite a peculiar detail.
Yeah, it sets a strange tone. And it immediately paves the way for Adonai, doesn't it? One of David's sons. He basically just decides, okay, I'm king now. Gets himself chariots, horsemen, 50 guys running ahead.
It's a seriously bold move. And look who backs him. Joab, the army commander, and Abiathar the priest. Big names. But, like you said, maybe the bigger clue is who isn't there.
Exactly. Zadok the priest, Benaiah, Nathan the prophet, they're not on board. And crucially, Solomon and his supporters aren't involved. That tells you there's a serious split here. It's not unanimous at all.
Not even close. And it's Nathan the prophet who makes the first strategic move. He goes to Bathsheba with some advice.
Right, let's look at that. Nathan goes to Bathsheba, Solomon's mother, and kind of asks, hey, didn't David promise you Solomon would be king? Because Adonijah's acting like he already is, and David seems clueless. It's pretty smart, playing on her worries about her and Solomon's safety.
Oh, definitely. So Bathsheba goes straight to the ailing King David, reminds him about this promise, this oath he supposedly made about Solomon, and then Nathan himself goes in right after her and confirms everything she said. It's a very effective, coordinated appeal.
And here's where it gets dramatic. David, even though he's old and weak, he acts decisively. He tells Zadok, Nathan, and Benaiah, get Solomon, put him on my mule, take him to Gihon, and anoint him king, now. I mean, picture it. Solomon on the king's personal mule, the big public announcement, the trumpet blast, everyone shouting, God save King Solomon. It's a direct countermove.
And the news spreads like wildfire. Adonijah and his supporters, they're having their own feast, right? They hear the noise from the city, and they panic. Adonijah runs and grabs the horns of the altar seeking sanctuary. Solomon's initial pardon. It's conditional. Very savvy.
But yeah, that condition doesn't last forever. Before David dies, he gives Solomon his final charge. It's like a royal handover memo. First, obey God's laws. That's paramount. But then specific instructions. Deal with Joab for killing Abner and Amasa way back when. And don't let Shammai, the guy who cursed David, die peacefully. It's quite the mix of piety and political settling of scores.
It really shows how personal history, politics, and religious duty were all tangled up. David's 40-year reign ends, Solomon takes over, seemingly secure, but then Adonijah makes this, well, incredibly bold, maybe just foolish request. He asks Bathsheba to ask Solomon if he can marry Abishag.
Ah, yes. And this is where Solomon shows he's not just wise, he's sharp, like razor sharp. And maybe a bit paranoid, he reads this request not as wanting the woman, but as a sneaky claim to the throne. His logic is, well, he's the older brother. If he gets Abishag, who is close to my father, next he'll ask for the kingdom.
Oh, with less calculation.
That's a harsh reading, but maybe politically realistic in that context. And Solomon doesn't hesitate. Benaiah is sent, Adonijah is executed. Then he deals with the supporters. Abiathar gets banished to his hometown, Anathoth. Joab tries the altar sanctuary trick again, like Adonijah, but it doesn't work this time. Benaiah executes him right there. Solomon is definitely cleaning house, consolidating power. Okay, so shifting gears slightly. Solomon's early reign. We see a different side now, right? His pursuit of wisdom. The text mentions his marriage to Pharaoh's daughter, a big political alliance, and it notes that people were still sacrificing at these high places because, well, the temple wasn't built yet.
Right. These local shrines were common before the central temple in Jerusalem. Not necessarily bad at first, but later seen as a problem, potentially leading to mixing religions. And then comes that huge moment at Gibeon. God appears to Solomon in a dream, says, ask for whatever you want.
Wow. An open check from God.
Pretty much. And Solomon's answer is honestly quite amazing, especially for a young king. No long life, no riches, no victory over enemies. He asks for an understanding heart to judge thy people, that I may discern between good and bad. Basically, wisdom for governing.
And God is pleased, really pleased, grants him the wisdom plus the riches and honor he didn't even ask for. But there's always that condition, isn't there? Stay obedient. That theme keeps coming back.
It absolutely does. And then we get that classic story, the two women and the baby. Such a famous example of his wisdom.
Yeah, how do you solve that? Two mothers, one living baby, one dead, both claiming the living one.
Solomon's move is pure genius, showing deep insight into, well, a mother's love. Cut the baby in half, he says, and the real mother just cries out, no, give him to her, just let him live. That raw emotion, the text calls it the yearning of her bowels, it reveals the truth instantly.
It wasn't just a clever trick, though, was it? It showed he understood people, understood their deepest feelings. That's crucial for a ruler.
Exactly. It demonstrated that ability to see past the surface claims to the real heart of the matter, a key part of genuine wisdom, not just cleverness.
And the result. All Israel hears about it and respects his judgment, believing the wisdom of God was in him. His reputation is sealed. Then the focus shifts to how he organized the kingdom. Sounds pretty structured.
Oh, very. We get lists of his top officials. And, maybe more revealingly, these 12 district officers, each one responsible for supplying the royal household for a whole month. That system shows the scale of his court and how the whole kingdom supported it. We even get names and regions mentioned.
The amount of food needed daily is just mind-boggling. 30 measures of flour, 60 of meals, 30 oxen, 100 sheep plus deer, birds. Wow. It paints a picture of incredible prosperity, immense wealth. And peace, too. The text mentions the extent of his rule and the peace he maintained.
That peace, largely secured by David's earlier campaigns, was vital. It let Solomon focus inward on building projects, especially the temple. The text also raves about his wisdom, smarter than anyone, thousands of proverbs and songs, knows everything about nature, from cedars to hyssop, animals, fish. People came from everywhere just to hear him speak.
Which brings us right to the main event. Building the temple. It starts with Hiram, the king of Tyre. He was friends with David, right? So he's happy to help Solomon, sending cedar and fir logs from Lebanon. The logistics must have been insane.
Truly a colossal project. 30,000 Israelites drafted for labor, working in Lebanon in monthly shifts, plus 70,000 carriers and 80,000 stone cutters working in the quarries. And the text points out they used these expensive pre-cut stones, so the actual building site was quiet. No hammers or axes heard.
The details in Chapter 6 are amazing. The dimensions, 60 cubits long, 20 wide, 30 high. A cubit is, what, elbow to fingertip? So a big building. We hear about the porch, the side chambers, the winding stairs, and the inside. Wow, cedar panels, fir floors, all overlaid with gold, especially the inner sanctuary, the oracle.
Yes, the most holy place where the Ark of the Covenant would go. That description is incredible. Two huge cherubim of olive wood, 10 cubits high, wings spanning 10 cubits, touching in the middle, and everything in there. The altar, too, covered in pure gold. Walls carved with more cherubim, palm trees, flowers, all gold.
And the inner court, too, built with finished stone and cedar. And it took 7 years. 7 years to build. That's dedication. Chapter 7 then mentions Solomon's other projects. His own palace took 13 years. And that house of the forest of Lebanon, huge place, 100 cubits long.
Right. After the temple, he builds his own massive complex. And we can't forget the other Hiram of Tyre, the craftsman, not the king, the artisan. He made the famous brass pillars, Jachin and Boaz, the giant molten sea basin held up by 12 brass oxen, 10-wheeled stands, 10 basins, just tons and tons of brass and gold items, so much they didn't even weigh it all.
Then Chapter 8, the big moment, bringing the Ark of the Covenant into the finished temple. All the leaders of Israel are there, huge crowds, countless sacrifices. They place the Ark in the oracle under the cherubim's wings. And the text notes, only the 2 stone tablets of the law were inside it by them.
It represented God's presence, the covenant. So placing it there was hugely significant. And then that cloud, the glory of the Lord, fills the temple. So intense the priests can't even stand to minister, a powerful sign of divine presence. Solomon's prayer of dedication follows. It's beautiful, thanking God, acknowledging the temple is a place for prayer for everyone, even foreigners.
And the sacrifices for the dedication, just unbelievable numbers. 22,000 oxen, 120,000 sheep. The feast lasts 14 days. It really feels like the absolute high point of Solomon's reign.
It certainly seems that way. But then, Chapter 9 delivers a bit of a reality check. God appears to Solomon again, repeats the promise of an enduring dynasty if he remains obedient, and the warning is stark. Disobey, and Israel will be cast out. The temple itself will become a ruin, a cautionary tale.
We also see a slightly less impressive side of Solomon, maybe, giving Hiram 20 cities in Galilee that Hiram clearly thought were rubbish, calling them Kabul, and more about the forced labor the levy used for all the building.
Yeah, the text clarifies it was mainly the non-Israelite populations used for the hard labor, while Israelites served as soldiers and officials. Not quite slavery for his own people, but still a heavy burden, and his wealth just keeps piling up. His navy at Geber, partnering with Hiram again, brings back shiploads of gold from Ophir.
Then the Queen of Sheba episode in chapter 10. It's just legendary. She comes because she heard about his wisdom, huge entourage, camels loaded with spices, more spices than ever seen before. The text says gold, jewels.
And she's completely stunned by what she sees. His wisdom, his talents, the food, the servants, the whole operation. She basically says, wow, I hadn't even heard the half of it. The descriptions of his wealth are almost fantastical. 666 talents of gold annually. Gold shields everywhere, that ivory throne overlaid with gold, 6 steps, lions guarding it.
Silver was apparently like stones in Jerusalem, just commonplace. And he imported horses from Egypt. We even get the prices. It's peak Solomon. But then, chapter 11, the turn, the downfall. It's quite tragic, really. Despite God's clear warnings, he marries many foreign women, from nations explicitly forbidden: Pharaoh's daughter, Moabites, Ammonites, Edomites.
And the text says, in his old age, his wives turned away his heart after other gods. You have to wonder, host speaker mentioned his ruthlessness earlier with Adonijah. Was that kind of political pragmatism always at odds with, deeper faithfulness? Did it pave the way for these later compromises?
That's a really good question. It feels like a slippery slope. He starts building shrines, high places for their gods: Ashtoreth, Milcom, Chemosh, Molech, right near Jerusalem. It's blatant disobedience. And God is angry, having warned him twice before.
The judgment comes. The kingdom will be torn from him. Not in his lifetime, though, out of respect for David. But his son will lose most of it. Only one tribe will remain loyal to the Davidic line. And suddenly adversaries pop up. Hadad the Edomite, Rezin in Damascus. Things start to unravel, and we meet Jeroboam, one of Solomon's own officials, who gets a prophecy from Ahijah the prophet. He will rule 10 tribes. Solomon tries to kill him, so Jeroboam flees to Egypt.
So the stage is set for the split. Chapter 12, Rehoboam, Solomon's son, goes to Shechem to be crowned. And the people come to him with a reasonable request. Your dad worked us really hard, lighten the load, and we'll serve you.
Rehoboam asks the old advisors who serve Solomon. They say, listen to the people, be their servant today, and they'll serve you forever. Wise counsel. But then he asks his buddies, the young guys he grew up with. They say, no way, show them who's boss. Tell them your little finger is thicker than your father's waist.
Yeah, and my father whipped you with whips, I'll whip you with scorpions. I mean, just disastrous advice. And he takes it, he gives the people that harsh answer.
And that's it. The 10 northern tribes just say, forget David, we're out of here. To your tents, O Israel. Total rejection. They even stone Adoram, Rehoboam's head of forced labor, when he tries to assert authority. Rehoboam has to jump in his chariot and flee back to Jerusalem. He's left ruling only Judah and Benjamin.
He thinks about fighting, raising an army to force them back, but God steps in again through Shemaiah the prophet. Don't fight your brothers. So civil war is avoided for now, but the split is real, it's permanent. Jeroboam comes back from Egypt and is made king of the northern kingdom, Israel.
And one of Jeroboam's first acts is crucial and ultimately disastrous. Religiously speaking, he's worried that if his people keep going down to Jerusalem to worship at the temple, their loyalty will drift back to Rehoboam.
Ah, the political angle of religion.
Exactly. So he makes 2 golden calves, sets one up in Bethel, in the south of his kingdom, and one in Dan, way up north. And he tells the people, these are your gods who brought you out of Egypt, echoing the sin with the golden calf back in Exodus.
Wow. So he deliberately creates an alternative idolatrous worship system to keep political control, builds new shrines, appoints priests who aren't Levites, even changes the date of a major festival. It's a complete break.
A complete politically motivated religious break. And chapters 13 to 22, they really just trace the fallout from this division. We see king after king in both Israel and Judah. It becomes this cycle. Some good kings, mostly bad ones, constant struggles with idolatry, especially in the north, political turmoil, and prophets constantly speaking truth to power.
Yeah, like that story where a prophet from Judah confronts Jeroboam right at his new altar in Bethel, prophesies its destruction, gives a sign the altar splits open. Jeroboam points at him, his hand withers, then it's healed when the prophet prays. You'd think that would make an impact.
You would, but no, Jeroboam keeps right on with his idol worship. It's incredibly stubborn. And then that sad story of the prophet himself being tricked by an older prophet into disobeying God's command not to eat or drink there, and he ends up getting killed by a lion. A harsh lesson about obedience.
Then Jeroboam's son, Abijah, gets sick. Jeroboam sends his wife in disguise to the old blind prophet Ahijah, the same one who first prophesied Jeroboam would be king. But Ahijah, even blind, knows who she is and delivers this terrible judgment on Jeroboam's whole family because of the idolatry. Though he does say something good about the sick child, Abijah.
Right. That Abijah had some good thing toward the Lord. But the dynasty is doomed. Jeroboam dies, his son Nadab takes over, and surprise, surprise, he continues the evil ways.
Meanwhile, down in Judah, Rehoboam isn't great either, leads the people into sin, and they get invaded by Shishak, king of Egypt. He loots the temple and the palace, takes Solomon's gold shields. Rehoboam has to replace them with bronze. Kind of symbolic, isn't it?
Very symbolic. The golden age is definitely over. His successors in Judah, Abijah and Asa, have mixed records. Asa tries some reforms, removes idols, but doesn't get rid of all the high places, and the war between Judah and Israel just grinds on.
And Israel in the north. It's just chaos for a while. Nadab, Batasha, Elah, Zimri, Omri, kings getting assassinated. Super short reigns, constant instability.
All of them sticking to Jeroboam's sin. Omri is significant, though. He buys a hill and builds a new capital city, Samaria. That becomes key later.
Then comes Omri's son Ahab. And the text pulls no punches, says he was worse than all the kings before him.
Absolutely. And a big reason is his marriage to Jezebel, daughter of the king of Sidon. She brings Baal worship with her, full force. Ahab built a temple for Baal, an altar, a sacred grove. It's state-sponsored paganism. And during his reign, someone rebuilds Jericho and his sons die, just as Joshua had prophesied centuries earlier.
And into this darkness steps Elijah. Elijah the Tishbite, boom, prophesies a drought, no rain for years.
Just appears out of nowhere, delivers the message, and disappears. Then we get those stories of God providing for him, ravens feeding him, the widow of Zarephath whose flour and oil never run out, and he even raises her son from the dead, establishing his credentials as a true prophet of God.
Then the big showdown, Mount Carmel. Elijah versus 450 prophets of Baal and 400 prophets of Asherah. Epic stuff. The challenge, call down fire from your God to burn the sacrifice. Baal's prophets try all day. Nothing.
They're shouting, dancing, cutting themselves. Complete frenzy. Then Elijah calmly rebuilds the Lord's altar, digs a trench, soaks everything with water 3 times, prays a simple prayer, and whoosh, fire from heaven consumes the offering, the wood, the stones, the dust, even laps up the water in the trench.
Incredible. The people fall on their faces. The Lord, he is the God. Elijah then has all the prophets of Baal executed, and then finally, rain returns.
But Jezebel is furious, sends Elijah a death threat. And incredibly, this powerful prophet runs for his life, ends up in the wilderness totally despairing, wanting to die.
It's very human, isn't it? Even after that massive victory, an angel sustains him. He travels 40 days to Horeb Mount Sinai, the mountain of God. And there he encounters God. Not in the wind or the earthquake or the fire, but in that still small voice, a quiet whisper.
A profound moment. God reassures him, tells him he's not alone. There are 7,000 in Israel who haven't worshipped Baal. He gives him his next tasks. Anoint Hazael, king of Syria, Jehu, king of Israel, and Elisha as his own successor. The work continues. He then calls Elisha, who's plowing a field.
The story keeps moving. Wars with Syria continue. Israel actually gets some victories, guided by prophets. But then Ahab lets Ben-Hadad, the Syrian king, go free after capturing him. And another prophet condemns him for it. Then comes that awful story about Naboth's vineyard.
Yes. Ahab wants this vineyard next to his palace. Naboth refuses to sell his family inheritance. Ahab sulks like a child. Jezebel steps in, engineers false charges of blasphemy against Naboth. He's stoned to death, and Ahab takes the vineyard. Utterly corrupt.
Elijah confronts him again, pronounces doom on Ahab and Jezebel. Dogs will lick Ahab's blood where Naboth's died. Dogs will eat Jezebel. Chilling stuff. Ahab actually shows some repentance, rips his clothes, fasts, and God delays the worst of the judgment, says it will fall on his son's house instead.
It shows even someone like Ahab could repent, and God responds. But the trajectory is set. The final chapters here cover Ahab teaming up with Jehoshaphat, the king of Judah, who was mostly a good king, to fight Syria again at Ramoth-Gilead. Ahab has his 400 yes-men prophets predicting victory. Jehoshaphat's uneasy, asks, "Isn't there a prophet of the Lord we can ask?"
Yeah, Ahab grumbles, "There is one Micaiah, but I hate him. He never says anything good about me." Tells you everything, right? They bring Micaiah. He first sarcastically tells him to go fight and win. Then, when pressed, he gives the true vision. Israel scattered, shepherdless, Ahab's death. He even describes seeing God allowing a lying spirit to deceive Ahab's prophets. Micaiah gets slapped and thrown in prison for telling the truth.
Ahab tries to cheat fate, goes into battle disguised. But, as the text says, a random arrow shot at a venture hits him. Mortally wounded, he dies in his chariot. They wash the chariot by the pool in Samaria. The dogs come and lick up his blood, exactly as Elijah prophesied. The section ends mentioning Jehoshaphat continuing his reign in Judah, and Ahab's son Ahaziah taking over in Israel and being just as wicked as his parents.
Wow. Okay, so stepping back from all that detail, what are the big takeaways from these first 22 chapters? We've definitely seen the real messy side of leadership, haven't we? The huge impact of obeying or disobeying God. That constant tension between Judah and Israel. And the prophets, always there, speaking truth, warning, judging.
Absolutely. And some details just stick with you, don't they? David's old age and Abshag, Solomon's incredibly clever judgment with the baby, the sheer detail of the temple description, why the kingdom split, Rehoboam's arrogance, and those dramatic scenes with Elijah, Mount Carmel, the still small voice, Naboth's vineyard, unforgettable.
It really makes you think, looking at these kings, these stories, what are the lasting lessons here about power, about faith, about how nations rise and fall? You see these patterns, these consequences playing out over generations. What does that tell us? Maybe even about today. Lots to chew on there. For anyone listening, maybe digging into the history around these kings or looking more closely at how prophecy worked back then could be really fascinating next steps.